I bet you that you won't be able to finish this video from start to finish without checking the comments, clicking off, or getting distracted and doing something else. And if you do, and if you make it to the end, there's a little surprise for you. You have to wait and see. So, as I've been getting into this content creation journey, I decided I need a good quality mic. So I went on Amazon to have a look if I can purchase a mic, and I found one, this one right here actually. And the day that I bought it, one day later, it arrived, my doorstep. And I expected nothing less when I bought the mic. And it really got me thinking, this is the problem with the instant gratification that modern life provides with us. And I expected it. I expected to receive the mic one day later. If we had to go 10, 5, even a couple years ago, receiving a product that I just thought of and then went and purchased a day later is unheard of. And so it really gets me thinking on the degree that humans will go to get instant gratification. Let's talk about dopamine detoxing. Perhaps the biggest question around dopamine detoxing is the dangers, one, that this device causes, your phone. It's a little biology for you. In your brain, you have dopamine receptors. And when we receive or do pleasurable activities, our brain releases dopamine and then we feel a sense of pleasure. So the activities are things that are rewarding, and this affects your motivation. It affects how you feel. It affects whether you get things done. And so this right here provides the instant gratification and a high amount of dopamine instantly. If you go on social media, if you go on if you're shopping or go on YouTube, gaming, video games, all these things provide micro doses of dopamine, and then you can get greater and greater levels from this phone. The problem is what happens when we consume too much dopamine, and this is what modern life has created, is our brains become overstimulated and the dopamine receptors can no longer handle the amount of dopamine that it's being released. And so what happens is they become desensitized. Dopamine is released at a lower level because the activities that are being done do not trigger it as much. If you're constantly on your phone scrolling hours and hours and hours, and then you try and do something hard, like go on a run or exercise, the pleasure that you feel from that is much less than if you had to do those activities before scrolling for hours. And that's because your brain, the receptors in your brain, are desensitized. Another crazy thing I found out is that your dopamine receptors, they actually don't just become desensitized and weaker, but they actually become less of them in your brain. So you actually feel less pleasure by going into artificial dopamine like this phone. Now, how do you resolve this? And there's so many things on the internet on how to fix your dopamine. The biggest one being dopamine detoxing, which is where you remove all sources of dopamine, all sources of activities that could cause dopamine. So, for example, your phone, social media, video games, some people even food. And then the idea is that after a certain period of time, your dopamine receptors will resort to normal and you'll be able to do hard things and receive genuine dopamine without it being overstimulated. The problem with this is I think personally it's a bit of an extreme take. In reality, one is very unfeasible sometimes. Like we use our phones, life is too much on our phones to not use them. But two, I think it also creates maybe an unhealthy obsession with trying to remove dopamine from our lives. Dopamine is good, it's just managing it. So I like to take a better approach personally. I mean, there's no better approach, it's just different approaches. Delayed gratification. And this is the idea that when you want to do something, an activity that is pleasurable, for example, playing video games, or going on your phone, or watching social media, or YouTube, or whatever, you delay that feeling And so you build up mental fortitude. You build up the ability to be able to withhold the temptation of instant gratification, because that's the root of it all, instant gratification, right? And then what happens is you build up dedication, you build up the ability to control urges. Like, I don't know if you have this, but often I'll pick up my phone for no apparent reason and I'll check it. And I'm like, I don't even know why I checked it. So building that sort of mental strength in order to not have instant gratification is a really, really beneficial thing. And you can do this by delayed gratification. But also, I think you mustn't have the sort of sweet right in front of you. Like your phone is like a sweet. You just want to grab it. You want an impulse. You got to be realistic and you got to make it easier for yourself. Like, don't make it harder for yourself. So I do think there's a place to get an accountability partner, to put your phone in a place where it's not easily accessible, and do things that make it harder for you to actually get the dopamine, if that makes sense. And so you need a detox, but I think you need a detox the right way. And I think that is done by delayed gratification. And then hopefully you can take back your life and start to do things that are harder but produce real dopamine. Running, exercising, setting goals that are hard, learning an instrument, learning a language. There's so many different types, right? But this is really, really important. Otherwise, we waste all our lives seeking this instant gratification and we wonder why we're lazy or we don't have motivation. But it's not that you're lazy, it's just that the situation, the environment that has been put in, the biochemistry in your brain is messed up and you just need to resolve that. Once you resolve that, take back control of your life and be better. Thanks for listening. Until next time.